The objective of this demo will cover how to configure basic email notification settings for the Foglight cartridge for SQL Server instances. A requirement when alarms are raised, a corresponding alert email notification can be dispatched to specified recipients. The same concepts are relevant when configuring email notifications for Foglight cartridge for Oracle and Foglight cartridge for DB2 agents. Foglight mail server settings are a requirement. Consult the listed video or the software user guide to configure the mail settings. Review the optional task on alternative methods for setting up email addresses. To configure email notifications at the alarm level for the database agents, log into the Foglight web console with the Foglight user and click on Databases. Select an instance to configure email notification settings. Notice the Configure Alarms button illuminates for access. Admissions to alarms are also accessible via administration. To suffice in configuring more than one instance with the same email notifications, select all the agents that apply. Click Configure Alarms. Working in the Settings tab, the Alarm view contains predefined rules organized by all alarms, a category of rules, or a single rule. Within this alarm view, you can customize alarm settings and email notifications for all alarms, a category of rules, or a single rule. During email configuration, if an email server is not found, you may get prompted to configure a mail server. For those instructions, refer to video How to Configure an Email Server or consult the software user guide. I forgot to mention, upon entering the database's alarms view, the selected agents to receive the same configured email notifications and/or alarm settings are listed under Selected Agents. To configure email notifications, decide on the scope for the change. Will it apply to all alarms, a category of rules, or a selected individual rule? For this exercise, I'll configure email notifications for a particular category, such as the locks category, as opposed to a selected rule in which should be simple enough to apply the same principles directly against it. Prior to defining the email notifications, let's review the listed and recommended options. Enable or disable all will enable or disable alarm and email notifications for all rules listed in the category. Set default email settings. Be aware when arranging these settings will globally configure all notifications to use the specified email address if the Use Default Address is checkboxed in the individual alarm email notification setting, and by default, the selection is checked for all alarms. To override if needed at the individual rule level, unselecting will option to insert a new address. Click on View Alarm Status should display the current state of each alarm in the category. It's recommended to ensure the alarm and notification status are both enabled for each individual alarm of choice. Email notifications for those individual alarms with disabled settings will not have any action taking place. You will receive no notifications for those particular alarms. Set configurations on selected agents is not currently an option for the email notification settings. It's a specific choice to copy alarm-related settings to the other agents. Click the Define Email Settings button to proceed with configuring the email notification settings, and a dialog box pops up. This box will only display upon configuring against all alarms or a category of rules, not for an individual rule. When defining email notifications, you control who receives email messages, the subject line, and some text in the body of the email. You can also dictate whether an email is sent based on severity levels. To change which severity levels that warrant an email notification, select the desired levels of severity from the Messages Will Be Enabled for Severities drop-down. To configure the same email recipients and messages for all severity levels, select Configure Settings for all severities and then click All Severities. To configure different email recipients and messages for each of the severity levels, select Configure Severity Specific Settings and then click a severity level to configure different email notifications for each level. For the demo purposes, I'll configure email notifications for all severities. In the Message Settings dialog box, configure the email recipients. You can enter in an email address, multiple email addresses separated by comma, or created registry variables. Uncheck Use Default Email Address to override this option if using email addresses other than the default. In the To field, type the addresses of the people who need to take action when this alarm triggers. In the CC field, type the addresses of the people who want to be notified when the alarm triggers. The subject is optional to configure. Added text will be included with the default message. The default message uses variables. Avoid editing the variables, which are identified with the @ symbol seen at the individual rule level. Next is body prefix. Any added text should appear above the alarm default message in the body of the email. Here's a sample. Click Set to set the email configurations for saving. Notice the check mark next to severities to acknowledge the configurations. Click Set to further stage the changes and exit out. Although the configurations are shown for each rule in the category, settings aren't complete until the changes are saved. Click Save Changes. Each enabled rule in the category now has the configure email notifications for the selected agents. You can verify by selecting the agent separately from the database's dashboard and re-entering the alarms view. Repeat the process to configure additional email notifications for the rules when needed. At this point, the demo is complete.